everyone, to the Burnout Club. This is a place where we explore burnout and success, one expert and experiment at a time. I'm your host, Patrice Bonfiglio, and today I am joined by Meghan Williams. She is the CEO of the self-publishing agency. Meghan, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm very excited about this. She was introduced to me by Diane, and I know many of you really love that episode with Diane a few weeks ago. So, whenever someone is sent in high regards, it's always a fantastic episode. So let's.
Yeah, and as we were saying in the pre-record, that Diane holds such high standards, so it's always nice to be introduced to somebody who has the same standards as well. So thank you for having me.
Of course. And you're completely different from all of the other guests. So you're going to bring a very unique perspective. So why
Okay,
don't you dive
I
in
hope
and
so.
tell everyone?
Anyways,
Yeah, tell us about you and about the self-publishing agency.
like many entrepreneurs, we start a business when we see a gap in the market for something that either isn't being done well enough or isn't fulfilling a need that we were looking for ourselves. So in my case, I mine was a little bit of both. I was looking to publish a book, and there weren't any companies that there's like the big traditional publishers that existed when we think about like the movies
Mhm.
and the big publishing houses, and then there was a lot of like organizations that were helping authors self-publish. And self-publishing 10 years ago when I was starting to do it was a little bit like online dating,
Yeah.
where everyone was like, oh, like you couldn't have done it the regular way, why are you
Yeah.
deciding to do it that way? Anyhow, publishing has changed a lot. And so we started our business about 10 years ago because I was looking for something, and there was a really big gap in the marketplace, a place that like our business could, or a business could hold up traditional standards, like we're just talking about from the movies and everything like this,
Right.
while being able to maintain autonomy
Mhm.
and being able to do it ourselves. So that business didn't exist. So what do we do when a business like that doesn't exist? We create it ourselves. So that's what I did alongside with like a team. We've been growing pretty consistently year over year. So our team is pretty big now, and we're able to help authors like Diane and authors internationally who have really high standards and are looking to share either their story or deliver their messaging for their business or otherwise in like a professional publishing way, but having control of timelines, costs, etc. So that's
Fantastic.
and I'd pretend that I have like lots of other hobbies besides working, but I love my job so much. So I like, besides like loving being a parent, loving exercising with my friends and working out, I otherwise just love work. So that's my story.
That sounds very healthy. Okay, so we definitely need to dissect this. You're loving a lot of things. It seems like you were really enjoying your career. So I think anytime you start a business, and also when you love it, that means you're working incredibly hard because you're dedicating a lot of thought and time to it. So how have you been able to either prevent burnout or work through it during that process?
Huh. I did not prevent burnout at all. I made up this like schedule in burnout world, like that, or that led ultimate to burnout. And I don't know if anybody who's left corporate life um and then entered an entrepreneurial space, I like set up a bunch of kind of parameters and rules for myself in case I risked falling off the rails, such as like, what if I didn't work a regular 8-hour day?
Mhm.
Then I would be not working, right?
Mhm.
So I like would set these like parameters like, well, I used to work 9 to 6 most days. So then that must mean I should work the equivalent of in my entrepreneur, like business owning life. So then
Mhm.
I like I did that. And then, but unfortunately, I didn't put any guardrails up on my own life. So therefore, I'm like, well, maybe I'll just keep working a little bit. And then, so like what became like what used to be a salaried 8-hour day plus a lunch break was becoming like 8 hours plus eat all meals at desk.
Mhm.
And it kind of just crept. So I didn't have, so I thought I was like, here's my plan. And then all of a sudden, I like just only bent the rules on one side of the
Yeah.
business, which is to keep working.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that over time continued to like creep up. like exponentially. And part of the, I mean, especially in the COVID world when everything went back online, that becomes like exponentially easier to just be like, maybe I'll just pop back online right before I go to sleep, or maybe I'll just pop back. Like, so you end up like popping back online to clean your inbox
Yeah.
and then thinking that it's going to be helpful, but really it just all of a sudden makes you just work more. And before you know it, you're kind of, that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
Then I also recognized that like I was on that treadmill of like the speed was going and I'd
Mhm.
set the pace and things were going. But the other part that I recognized is that I've only recognized this in foresight, so or in hindsight. So don't think that I was like in the middle of it realizing this about myself. Um it was that the harder I worked or the more I was working so I could say I'm very busy. Like, and it's not to say to other people, it was actually just to say, like, saying it to myself. I was just telling
Mhm.
myself in conversation with other people, I'm very busy. Like, how's work going? Oh, I'm so busy. It's great. Like, and that's not
Mhm.
like even a badge of honor. It's just like telling myself that's story. Anyhow,
Mhm.
I recognized that there was something tied up in worthiness for me there. Like the
Oh.
harder I worked and the longer hours I worked, I imagined I would just be like more worthy
Mhm.
of like money, success, having this business like take off, all of this kind of stuff. And that if the business was going well, it must be because
Mhm.
I was working a lot of hours. I was going for volume and quantity and quantity, quality and quantity. Um, and then so that I don't know, I just kind of you just keep on doing that and you just like, oh, I don't know. I'm just so busy. And I just kept telling myself, I'm just so busy. Things are great. Like I'm really busy. I just don't know. I
Mhm.
just need more time. Like just, and again, this is not telling other people this. This was actually like, I was just telling myself this for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And a little over like a year and a half ago in like, well, I'm a parent, like, I mean, we've got a young family and lots happening in our
Mhm.
like non-work lives,
Yeah.
and my husband has a career, like lots of moving pieces in our lives. And yet, and about a year and a half ago I like was on a Zoom call
Mhm.
and I was like listening to somebody talk and I felt a lump in my neck, and I immediately was like, well, I've got cancer and I'm going to die. Like I was immediately like, I just panicked.
Yeah.
And anyhow, I, being like an assertive person, like ran it all up the chain pole, but it took like, it was about 6 months. But in 6 months, I did get diagnosed with cancer and
Really?
was told that I've got like a blood cancer and that I was going to have to start chemotherapy.
Really?
So this is about a year ago now that I started chemo, hence my short hair.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's amazing. But oh my goodness.
and outside of diving into like I'm very, very, very lucky that the cancer that I was diagnosed with has a cure and
Oh,
I'm in
good.
complete remission now.
Oh.
Um but yeah, and without diving into the like the fear and the panic of what cancer will do to your life, what
Mhm.
that did was it just unplug, like I was on that treadmill like running hard, and it
Yeah.
was as if the universe just was like, you're not listening. So we're just going to unplug this treadmill. We're not going to kill you,
Yeah.
but I'm going to unplug this. And you're going to hit the wall so hard that you're going to just like not, you're just going to slow right down. So I was
Right.
just running at full tilt for
Mhm.
8 years. And then the universe was like, just unplugged it, and the treadmill stopped immediately. And I hit the wall and was basically like, oh, this is terrible. And I had the wind knocked out of me,
Mhm.
and it forced me to like I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to keep working. I wasn't
Mhm.
sure what, like the first thing I was like, how am I going to work?
Yeah.
How am I going to work if I'm going through chemo?
Mhm.
And my like business partner was like, what do you mean? How are you going to work? Like, who cares? So,
Yeah.
and I'm
Right,
like,
'cause that's not
right, but
everybody.
like, that's
Yeah.
all that I can think about right now. And
Yeah.
eventually, a nurse had told me on the first day of chemo that if you can work and you can work out throughout your chemo, you are going to do better. It will be less,
Really.
but but you will feel better.
Mhm.
So I was like, great, thank you. So But anyways, what I ended up doing is I like everything got scaled back and I just
Mhm.
manipulated my entire calendar. Once I knew my rhythm of treatment,
Mhm.
I just all of a sudden like was only available for I was very limited for appointments and meetings and everything, and the rest I would just spot clean my inbox. And very fortunately, I have a very competent like team that was able
Mhm.
to pick up the slack and take over things that I apparently didn't need to be doing, but I was anyways. Um, and it really slowed. So for about 6 months, my calendar like and my I slowed down to like a walk, occasionally a jog, but a walk.
Yeah.
And I don't think I mean, I think that was my burnout. That
Mhm.
I don't know what else that would have been, but that was burnout in a very catastrophic, life-changing, very scary way. But it has since, like, in this process, like, for in my case, it was cancer. In other people, it's, a physical something that shows up. For some people, it's mental, it's marriage. It can be burnout can show up in lots of different ways
Mhm.
for people. It can be
Yeah.
like very medical, I think, for people. But it did just like cause an entire like system reset to be like, what am I doing any of this for?
Yeah.
And how do we not go back once I recover? How do I not go back to
Mhm.
like the clip that I was running at
Yeah.
before? And fortunately, in that period of time, I had a lot of like just time to just work through like why is it that I think that working more equals more success
Yeah.
and all of that. And turns out that it didn't because the I got we've had a very, very successful year without me working full time. So
That's
um
amazing.
yeah, for that reason I also got it was like the universe also was like, okay, you're learning your lessons,
Mhm.
you're hearing us, we're also going to reward you with what you're learning. So
Yeah.
start limping back and we'll start making sure that you don't you're not having this fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, you work harder,
Mhm.
you make more money or you more clients or whatever, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
So
You hit
anyways,
on
that was a long walk or a long jog to answer your question, but hopefully that gives you the full spectrum of
yeah.
what me avoiding burnout because
Totally.
I didn't avoid it. It just unplugged the whole system for me. So
Yeah. And most of the listeners here haven't avoided it either. So you're in good company. But you hit on such great universal points. I think decoupling the busyness with the worthiness, it's it's all over the place. It's really almost kind of in the fabric of our culture to think that when we're going, busy, 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 that that means like, okay, we're ripe for success at that point. And
yeah.
your story here is just highlighting that that's not the case. We need to be more cognizant of what we're doing and not as accepting of the busyness, just without considering the alternative.
Yeah, because like I mean, I'm all for being busy. You just said you can't to have it wrapped up in worthiness is a
Mhm.
different it's different,
Yeah.
right? Or to have busy be caught up in like because that's what everyone else is doing. That's that kind of is a bit useless because we would never say, "Oh, I'm running a marathon because everyone else is running a marathon." I mean, some people
Right.
do, but that's not
I
like
definitely don't.
yeah, exactly. But we would but that to that analogy, we would think that's ridiculous, wouldn't we?
Right.
If like everyone around you was like, "I'm
Mhm.
running a marathon," and you're like, "Well, I don't run, but I guess I should start running one too." You wouldn't do it because you're like physically that's
A
crazy
lot.
for you
Yeah.
to suggest me to do something I don't want to do at all. But yet we do that in our schedules, we do that with our businesses. We're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, well, I should just do this, I guess." And then we all of a
Right.
sudden are burning out.
Yeah. It's like filling the void. And then I mean, the huge story that you just told, like telling us about your health crisis, and it's such a great reminder for us, like what would happen to you if your treadmill got unplugged, right? Because all of us are on a treadmill. I had
Mhm.
a similar situation to you where I one day just couldn't move. I couldn't bend my knee anymore. It just would not move whatsoever. And turns out there was a tumor behind my kneecap. And that's why I couldn't bend it. And it turned out that it was benign. So I didn't have to actually go through what you went through in the treatment. But it really is that unplugged treadmill moment. Like, whoa, wait, what's going on? Like, I can't live my life the same today that I did a week ago and the past, 10, 20 years. Like, I need to change something. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, I think one positive side is that we've had that reckoning with ourselves, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of people listening right now that, maybe you're lucky in that you haven't had something really crazy happen to you, but ask yourself, what if it did happen? And do you need to be going at level 55 on the treadmill every day, all day?
Yeah, I haven't changed so much that I'm like, "Oh, my life definitely is different."
Hmm.
But that thought of, "Oh, I'm what is preventative?" Right?
Hmm.
Because the thing that I was categorically being like, "Well, I eat organic, I work out all of the time, I like meditate, I journal, I'm like checking a lot of boxes of the
Yeah,
things I
you are.
should be doing for longevity, right?
Yeah.
And then yet yet I still get sick. So it did make me think that like the box checking in terms of like balance, like
Mm.
it was still so out of whack. And I'm not to suggest that like, stress and my schedule and the burnout actually gave me cancer. I think my pot was boiling, and I think that this is when it showed up. It was like when my system was probably peak tired,
Hmm.
um and peak stress. So it's not to suggest, I'm not going to medically suggest that like I was like I did this to myself because I was like working so hard. But
Understood. Yeah.
I also don't think it's unrelated either.
Hmm.
It didn't happen when it happened. Like that's not that it happened because I was like far overtired.
Hmm.
The pace had been going on for too long, and I actually hadn't I spent the summer reading books on rest and working shorter and looking at like the research behind like what could actually happen if we were to work less, etc. So
Well, that sounds like an interesting reading list. Any recommendations?
yeah, those are the two books.
Oh, those are the
They're
names of the
actually, yeah, that's what they're called. One book is called Rest and one book is called Shorter. And like you should read it in that order.
books.
They're written by a Stanford professor, and I read these books or I listened to them while I was walking. All the metaphors about walking, not running, but I would go on walks and just listen to them and like try and wrap my head around if there had been scientific and like activity based research done that if I were to prioritize rest differently, is
Mhm.
there proof that it would benefit me and that I could still like make lots of money and
Yeah.
have a thriving business? That's the type of research I was after, and that's what the book gave me.
Oh, that's fantastic. So that seems like a must read for everyone.
Yeah.
So like you have it in that research, you also have it in your personal story. So we're on to something here. There is a better way, which is a nice hopeful message for everybody.
Yeah, I had thought during that in the reading, and I think back to if I were to have listened to this podcast before reading those things and before getting sick,
Mm.
I would have like not known when or how to get off of my own hamster wheel. And I don't
Mhm.
necessarily, so I think that's a really curious part for people is how do you slow your own treadmill before something unplugs for you? And I think it has to start with like scheduling days off or and committing to them the same way that people are disciplined in their exercise or disciplined in their
Mhm.
practices of meditation or spending time. I think looking back I would have had to do what I'm doing now. It's like when I need time to prepare for something or I
Mhm.
want to do something, I'm going to block off the entire day as a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And that's where I would have started or would have
Mhm.
gone for a walk and started listening and counted that as something.
Yeah. That's such a good point, right? I feel like non-negotiable typically isn't where the barrier is, right? It's like, oh, I can take a day off, but I also will work the entire day and calls and checking emails and you know, thinking about something and not really disconnecting or revitalizing yourself.
Yeah, and what it I did realize in that in being only able to take calls sporadically or have appointments or meetings, what I realized is that, things can wait, right? Like people like meaning if somebody can't get a meeting with you or me or anything until a week and a half from now, like that's actually okay.
Yeah.
Like that's okay.
And I think a
Um
lot of people need to hear that, right? Like we're not actually told that very much. So
Well, we accept it in other systems, right? We don't accept it necessarily in our own roles, but we accept it when we call a doctor's office or we accept it with a dentist or optometrist or any other like other systems. Even we accept it with our like hair appointments.
yeah.
If
Yeah.
somebody's like, "Oh, I can't see you for 2 weeks," and you're like, "3 weeks," and we're like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's when I'll see you then." We
Right.
accept
Yeah. The
that,
grays are just
but
gonna
we
show.
don't
Other-
we assume that in our own lives that no one can wait to see us, and
Mhm,
therefore I can fit you in tomorrow, and then
mhm.
what that means is add a consequence to tonight when I put my kids down to bed, I'm gonna try and make up for that,
Yeah.
like, and start emailing later on this evening or what have you. So,
Mhm,
like, yeah, I mean, it's worthwhile to like look at it and evaluate where in your life do you accept that it's okay to wait for other like you're going to have to wait for your hair appointment
mhm.
or to get into the dentist. That's going to have to happen.
Yeah.
But why can't that be okay for other people to meet with you or other projects to have a little bit more time on your end?
We just walked down this whole path and it was amazing because there's so many valuable nuggets that you've just shared. Originally, I was thinking about asking you about one of the phrases I saw in an article. And I think it's a direct quote from you. It was from Shout Out LA. And you had the phrase unblocked confidence.
Oh,
And
I said what?
that you had unblocked confidence. And I thought that was an amazing phrase. And I was just thinking, like, oh, okay, I can see that being really vital when you're building a business and coming up in your career. But do we still need unblocked confidence in navigating this stage where we're trying to keep burnout at bay and still, manage high levels of success with everything else going on in our lives and our families?
I hope so. Because the
Mhm.
thing is if we walk around with like, I mean, confidence in the sense of like like a confidence in a deep sense of self, right? Of like, I could try that. I could try to rest. I could try to do something
Mhm.
different. Like that type of the confidence to try something new is probably, if I'm thinking about the article or the
Mhm.
interview, I probably would have meant it in that reference. I don't
Yeah.
have like unblocked confidence when it comes to some decision making. Like I need to
Mhm.
bring in people that know more than I do or that are better than I am at something or
Yeah.
even I bring in people when I'm like I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that when it comes to like and the deeper word would be worthy, but it would be like I don't know if I even know how to plan that. Like so in terms of I don't have like I'm just not bulldozing with confidence of being like yeah, but I do have a confidence of like I can figure it out or
Yeah.
I have confidence to ask somebody
Mhm.
to bring somebody in. But I do think confidence as like as a sense of self is
Mhm.
like it's a huge asset that I'm like grateful for my parents and how I was like brought up that I'm not like, dragging around a whole bunch of like heavy baggage as a result of that. And,
Yeah.
like I just like walk around with like I can figure that out confidence and believe that so that's helpful, and it is helpful in our family lives. It's helpful as we figure out how we wanna change or how we wanna fix something, I
Mhm.
think. So if anybody has any of that, it's just walking it's that, right? It's I would love if every author that we work with, if every person I know has that feeling of like, "Yeah, I can figure that out. That's great.
Yeah.
No problem."
You now you bring up your authors again, and of course we should talk about them. Do you see the authors going through a burnout process as they're writing?
I hope not. We work really hard to make sure that they don't have burnout. I do think that with all big projects and in many of these authors case, like these projects are changing people's lives, right? They're changing
Yeah.
their own authors' lives, and then the ripple effect onwards is changing the readers' lives in one way or another. I do think, however, though, like with big projects like that, when you go through large intense periods, there is a fatigue process that you fatigue, and if you
Hmm.
know yourself well enough, if you have the confidence to know, you're like, after like the writing process, for example, that's very, very intense.
Hmm.
You do shift into some other decision making, such as cover designs and editorial decisions. Like, it does shift. But
Hmm.
then there's another window of time where things are really intense, when we're launching a book and you're talking about it all of the time, and people want want attention from you, and they
Yeah.
want interviews with you, and you're doing events, etc. There are typically authors, like, in terms of endurance, we're looking at,
Mm.
you know, 2 to 3 months of like that intense launch period. And then we do hope that they kind of like are able to slow a little bit, because you kind of need to go and recover a little bit. You need to like absorb everything that's happening, because otherwise you start resenting like
Mm.
things that you were otherwise planning for success, such as like, I don't want to do another book club. You're
Yeah.
like, well, what? Like, that's part of your launch plan. So
Yeah.
therefore, if you kind of like, if you know that these things are happening, I think, like, a lot of training periods, if you're an athlete, a lot of periods of
Hmm.
time like all involve taper times.
Yeah.
So with our authors, a best case scenario is that somebody who's launching in the fall will have the Christmas break and the
Mm.
New Year break to kind of reset, and then revisit what their new, other opportunities that are available for them in the spring season. Similarly, when somebody launches in this part of the year, then they have a little bit of like summer opportunity to kind of decompress
Hmm.
while everyone else is. Like, you follow I mean, I'm a just follow what everyone else is doing. We want people to relax at holiday season, so relax at holiday season. The book
Yeah.
shouldn't be any different.
Yeah. I actually wrote down taper time. I like that phrase. I'm going to use
Mm.
that and try to give myself a little taper time here and there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really useful, because if you roll in from, like, I mean, for example, if you in for athletes, if you aren't, every sport, whatever sport anybody follows, there is an off season.
Yeah, that's true.
And that off season can like and we get, again, in other systems, we appreciate that. We're like, "Oh,
Hmm.
hockey's off for the summer. I'll have to watch something else." Like, we give
Yeah.
everyone else opportunity to taper, to relax, to shut, like, to, you know, reset their system or their
Hmm.
bodies or their, like, everything, and
Yeah.
then they ramp it back up again. And in cases like mine, and probably other people who are not dissimilar to me, we are
Hmm.
like, don't allow for that at all.
Yeah. No
We're just
tapering.
like,
Yeah.
go. It doesn't make any sense. Well, like, why would we? That's silly.
Oh, no, that's so true. Now, one other thing I was going to ask you about is you're putting on a pretty significant international publishing conference, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that seems like a big endeavor that would be stress inducing. How are you going to avoid burnout with something of that magnitude?
It was one of these things that crept up on us a little bit. We're like, okay, it started as a smaller idea, and then we're like, maybe we'll just make it a local thing. And then we've just, when I say we, what happened is that I was like, I could only do it as a local thing.
Hmm.
And then somebody else I had a conversation with, who's outside of our organization, she's like, I would like to be a part of that. And so, fast forward 4 or 5 meetings, and you're like, what, this feels like it's a lot bigger and has a lot more potential. So it was one of these opportunities that we're like, we cannot go small. Like, let's just go big, because there's an opportunity to go very big. So
Yeah.
we created the Vancouver International Publishing Conference, which will be one of the largest and, you know, one of the only events of its kind on the West Coast. But to answer your question, to avoid burnout, it's kind of just what I've described, is that I'm not going to take the whole thing on by myself. This is
Yeah.
like this is a team, and I know some people have issue with micromanagement and making sure that they call them we use catchphrases like, oh, I'm so OCD, or I'm super type A, or I like to know everything. We tell ourselves what we are
Yeah.
to justify controlling everything.
Yeah. Totally.
Whereas if there's anything that I started really early on in my career was recognizing that, like, I'm not going to control everything, and I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time hiring people that are smarter than me at different things in their roles. And
Hmm.
therefore, when they need to do their job, I don't need to do it.
Yeah.
So that is how we're handling the conference. Like, for example, I'm not an event planner, so we're going to
Mhm.
hire an event planning company.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not equipped to speak about these things, so we're going to hire other people to do these things. So,
Hmm.
yes, it's an undertaking, but the idea is like, can you find the other smart people to do this by not cutting corners or anything like that? So that's
Hmm.
my new thing about how to avoid major burnout, is to recognize sometimes you're just going to have to pay to
Yeah.
have other people do the big lifts.
Let experts be experts.
Yeah. And, somebody once told me let's say, an event planner, I'm going to use just round general numbers. Let's say an event planner costs $1,000 for an evening.
Hmm.
And then you're like, oh, I really want to save that $1,000. You're like, but then in the process, when you're taking, nights away from your kids, or you are, not watching a movie with your husband, or all of that, you're like, or you're just starting to be like, I have no time to see my friends or do anything that I want. Somebody's like, if I were to, like, how much would you pay to get your time back? You'd be like $1,000, like,
Yeah.
no brainer. And you're like, why didn't like, if you inverse your own, like, I
Yeah.
would pay anything to not have this happen. You're like, well, you should just pay the $1,000 to have somebody manage the night for you then.
Yeah.
So
There are ways to do it, definitely.
yeah, exactly. So when we catch ourselves saying those phrases like, how much could I pay you to not have to, like, to get more sleep? You'd be like, I don't know, I'd pay a lot of money to get more sleep. We're like, right.
Yeah.
But then maybe you have to hire some more competent people.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of people taking this advice right now, because we all need more sleep. Now, switching gears, I believe you published books with your kids. Is that right? Children's books?
Yes, I published my own memoir, or a memoir of like my life pre-publishing,
Oh,
and then shortly it's called Our Interrupted Fairy Tale. I mean, we could go in.
yeah.
Here's a full circle moment for you, Patrice.
Mhm.
It's I wrote that book as a legacy story for my partner who had died from a blood cancer.
Oh, no.
And it was like it's a love story with the mistress of cancer in the
Oh,
middle of
good.
it. And so here's our full circle. Isn't that crazy that I'm now, like, married and have a family, and now have blood cancer, or had a blood cancer, and now we
Wow.
had to do it again. So there's my there's my personal life story on publishing. But
That's
that's what had
real.
that original story is what led me to start the company.
Hmm.
And then in the middle of it, also in that confidence that we were talking about, my stepdaughter, Maddie, we were driving one day and she's like, we should write, like, one of our favorite authors and tell them about a book idea. And then I'm like, that sounds like really a lot of fun. And then I was just like, why don't we write it ourselves then? And then I wanted to see, this was before I had a company, and I was like, I wonder if we could, like, why would we ask somebody else to do something? Like, why would we
Hmm.
pitch our idea to someone else to do it when we could just do it ourselves?
Hmm.
So we started writing. And then we found an illustrator, and then we built out this, like, sort of little 2-book series that did pretty well. And it was a lot of fun to do. She was 9 and 12 at the time, so that was a lot of fun. And then who knows? I mean, as I'm saying it now, maybe we have a 3-year-old as well, and maybe our 3-year-old will decide to, like, continue the series
Yeah.
as she gets a little bit older. So we'll see.
Every now and then I have flashes of an idea of doing that with my girls. And then I think about the time it would take to kind of get that done and figure it out. How
Well, you're
long did it
teeing
take?
us up to have that conversation about this is why you hire people to do that, isn't it? So
Spot on.
serve that on a platter for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. No, this is great. One thing I want to touch on, which is another topic again, but you set up your company to be very different than most of the other publishers in the business, in that you let the authors keep 100% of royalties.
Yeah.
Um, so that, since that is a nuance that people may not know about, can you just talk about the decision? Maybe kind of like go against the grain.
Again, it was kind of like a lot of entrepreneurs. Was looking for that in a company and it didn't
Mm.
exist. So I had been thinking like, well, if I was going to be investing all of this money and time and strategy into my own book, in some cases that's a business or what have you, why would I? And I wanted to hire people to help me create the best product possible. But
Hmm.
why, when I go and sell this book, do I have to now pay people for the sales of what the effort that I'm doing? And I just didn't like on a business sense, it didn't make any sense. Like, and
Hmm.
also just on a, I sleep really easy knowing that some of our authors are going to go on and they go and talk on TED, they go to Southwest by Southwest. We
Yeah.
have an author who's made her book into a movie. Like I am that is part of what happens when you put a book into the world and you chase the dream.
Hmm.
It's not for me to profit off of that. I don't think it's for me to support it and get really excited about it. But I believe that when somebody, it's not necessary. I think there's
Yeah.
a space in the market for a business like us that can allow for authors to have complete autonomy financially after they've finished working with us. We don't pay consultants like who help us build websites or businesses. We don't pay them
Yeah. Good point.
like, thanks, I've got 75 website hits. I'm gonna like send you like 3 grand. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't work like that. So again, when you look at other systems and what people feel comfortable with, this is one of them that this is like a dated piece of the industry for me that
Hmm.
I am like very happy to be ahead of the curve on.
That feels very inspiring. I can feel some authors bubbling right now.
I hope
Um,
so.
yeah. Can you just talk about in the future, is there something that you are looking forward to, either personally or just an aspect of the business? I always like to end on a positive, optimistic note.
Yeah, well, I mean, personally, I just in the early part of this year got told I'm in complete remission. So I'm like excited for my whole life right now. So I'm
Right.
like, so there's very little that doesn't excite me personally right now. We were at a friend's 50th the other night and people are like, how are you? I'm like, I can't help but just answer like, I'm amazing. I'm so
Yeah.
good. Like everything is
And you
great.
mean it.
And I mean it, and I hope to mean it for the rest, like for the next 60 years of my life.
Yeah.
Um, and then, um, but professionally, something I'm really looking forward to, honestly, and I appreciate you mentioning it. Like, I'm really excited about this conference. It's the Vancouver International Publishing Conference. It's really exciting for us, not only because it's one of the first conferences that, whether other people know what this is like in other industries, but it's the first conference where we're pulling back the blinds, where we're bringing in the experts to not to speak in front of writers. So we're
Wow.
bringing people from traditional publishing, from media, from like tech. We're bringing everybody in to have big conversations about publishing,
Hmm.
but not just as a mastermind for just people in publishing in the industry. We're looking to like pull back the blinds and we're inviting
Hmm.
anybody. So writers, authors, booksellers, anybody is able to come and see what's happening in the world of publishing.
Very
Um,
interesting.
and just offering as much transparency as we can. So that's really exciting, especially when you get to like bring the world to your doorstep. So that's pretty fun. So thanks for asking.
Yeah. I mean, if you see my face, you'll know why, right? 'Cause
I hope so.
that's a very interesting.
We'll
No,
get
it's
you a ticket. If you're able to make the trip, we'll make sure that you're taken care of. I'd love
oh,
you to
thank you.
come.
That's I will connect with you on that. Is there anything else you want the listeners to know? Because you have shared such an amazing amount of insight. I'm so happy you've been on the show today.
Oh, thank you. If you listen to books or you read books, rest or shorter, those would be the two sort of like starting points, I guess would be the only things I would share. And then, I mean, if it's okay to share, if anyone's ever interested in being in touch about publishing, whether it's keynotes or what have you, you can just find the Self Publishing Agency very simply on all platforms at the Self Publishing Agency. And I hope I hear from you as well, Patrice. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Megan. I am honored that you came on the show. Such a wonderful conversation. And to all the listeners, make sure you follow and like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.